Hear me all right? I reset the computer. Geez, it looks like that pretty picture I drew, right? They probably censored me for the music, and that's why you weren't hearing anything. Fucking clowns. You got to keep it 100 with you people. Notice that the statement is 100 letters, appropriate English and proper context, apostrophes, and wow. Now the question is AI duplicating me or am I duplicating AI? Pure mockery. Am I mocking you? Are you mocking me? Maybe I'm marking you, hexing you, crossing you. The banksters double crossed you already. You double crossed yourselves when you sinned and signed on the dotted line. How many people could say that? I'm always asking that out loud. How many people could even say what I'm saying? And the answer is always not many. Uh, no, John. I was born awake. That's the problem. I was born with my eyes wide open. I asked to see. And you get what you ask for. Be careful. You always get what you ask for. That drawing is 10 years old. That's my degree of authenticity. That's my tenure. That's my dime piece. Happened by accident. A brain fart. And I acted on that brain fart. And here we sit today. What's up with names like Todd and Tucker and Bob? Nothing really special about Todd and Tucker and Bob. So why should I worry about Bob, Tucker, or Todd's feelings? Fuck Bob, fuck Todd, and fuck Tucker too. Shit ass names. Weak ass fucking names. What kind of fucking name is Bob? How you doing, Bob? Are you a complicated person, Bob? Do you bob your head, Bob? Bob can be read Bob backwards in the mirror. It's amazing. Bob your head for apples. Do you like them apples, Bob? You could tell a lot about a person by their name. I bet Bob likes bobbing for apples. Want to bet on it? It's implied, isn't it? Should I assume that Bob likes bobbing? Is it a safe assumption? A lot of people like bobbing for apples, don't they? Quite a visualization. And because of that visualization, Bob, I realized that most people are chicken heads and they like bobbing a lot. Yup, yup. They don't say no. Bob can't sit still. Chickens can't sit still either. You ever notice that about chickens and Bobs, Dodds, Dod? They can't sit still. You know? They're always running around in circles squawking. Bob can't sit still. Sharon and Karen, they can't sit still either. That's why I tell them to run their mouths all they want to. Talking to polarity all you want to. Look what happens when they come to source, which is me. Right? I'm source. How you doing? I'm sourcing for you. Look what happens when they come to fucking source. It is funny, isn't it? They like information, but where did you get the information? Did you get it from source? Or did you get it from third party? Huh? Look what happens when you come to source direct. Where am I getting my information from? Source? I must be sourcing. What's the dictionary? Sorcery Codex. It's Codex. Most people don't use it. Think they know everything. I don't like the word God because we've been worrying about the name of God for thousands of years and it gets you nowhere. Ask source about it. Ask the dictionary. Say, I know a reason for everything. And they got an excuse for everything. It's wild, right? This visualization is wild. Almost as wild as the picture on the header. Hey, I drew that like 10 years ago. Who's copying me? Who's trying to copy me, AI? Hello? Man in the box, how you doing? I'm talking to you. You buy boxed goods in box stores, right? Or wrong? Because it's either right or it's wrong. There's no middle ground. No third option. Policies were designed to be divisive. No third options. 42 flavors for ice cream, coffee, donuts, sausage, Haagen-Dazs, Ben& Jerry's. 2 choices for president. Only 2 parties. Your silence tells me I should follow myself. Can't trust it. Well, deviation. They avoid the issues, making themselves affiliated with the issues. Silence resolves nothing. I'm gonna emphasize that forever. No, it actually caused the problems. Sitting silent to the problems makes you the problem. The majority of people's silence in regards to the abduction of my son and the avoidance and the deviation and the untimely responses, no responses, avoidance only. They can't answer a single fucking question. They deviate away from all questions. What's that do for Draco? Which is the larger picture? What did that solve? What does silence ever do for a newborn? Ask newborns about it. They can't talk. So now silence is why things are the way they are. People choosing silence. Right. Some people have enough money to feed every person in the fucking world and choose not to. Then they want to tell me I'm immoral because I'm worried about self preservation and preservation of self and my prodigy. Your silence is goddamn amazing. If you do not speak up or stand for anything, you will fall down for everything. They want to say I'm kind of like nothing. I know that's a lie because I did something. I lived my life. I said something. I wrote something. The reaction was nothing. I know that to every action, an equal or greater reaction, the largest action gains the largest reactions. The lines I wrote were for those partaking in religious factions. I'm not adding to the division. I'm recognizing the division. I'm teaching about my dear Aunt Sally, multiplication, addition, subtraction of division. I'm writing lines to make many realize the division is within policy. Please open your eyes. Don't fail to pay attention. There's three classes of vision: those who see the vision, those who see the vision when shown the vision, and thirdly, those who are paid to ignore the vision. I did not get capped into the system. I am that I am, the man who's fishing. You cannot be a fish if you're writing lines fishing. If I write something, say something, act on it, and you fail to respond, and you're a pawn for moving. If you don't say anything silently, you are saying something. If you're not rooting for me loudly, then you're consenting to me silently. Like how I operate? Go ahead, sit silent. Makes you goddamn predictable. I predicated your response, predicted it. Fight, fright sets in. Fight, fright. There's that mechanism. Fight, fright. What are they going to do? Run away silently or sit and make noise? Do you see how funny this shit is? I said it emphatically. It's fucking funny. They sound the same now. And they argue about superiority and the blacks are better than the whites and the males are below the females and all this shit. And they argue about how they're all different. And I'm sitting here going, God damn, you all sound the same. God damn, you all sound the same. Right? They all sound the same. They're silent. So they sound the same. That's a magic trick. If you don't have a response for these things, you're the trick. Trick's on you. That's what I realized. We have Monica Cruz to thank for this, everyone. We have Department of Health and Human Services to thank for it and those mental behavioral specialists, the psychiatrists, therapists, and they need group therapy sessions because of my session. What are we going to do about these things? Oh my God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to think for myself. I need group therapy. They operate externally, not recognizing the internal. I like talking to myself externally from the internal and outside. I hear myself on the inside. I express what's on the inside, outside to the inside to the outside. My inner monologue destroys your external monologue. I improve them from the inside out. Ding, ding. That's really funny. You can crack them from the inside out. Then they got to figure it out from the outside in. They got to work it backwards. They're conditioned to look at the external without the internal. I crashed that fucking system with my goddamn fist. How's that for ego? I crushed it with my fist. You want the proof? My tenure is on the wall. The writing is on the wall. My father not so happy anymore. Fucking flat earthers. Thinking everything is stationary and is flat on papyrus. Fuck is the matter with you? And if you don't like my attitude, I'd be looking at you and saying, well, I'm just talking to you the way my daddy talked to me. And if you don't like the way my daddy talked to me, then maybe you should talk to my daddy about you. My daddy. We don't learn about things until we suffer from them. My father loved making people cry. He was a bully. And one day I realized I could make people cry by telling them the truth. And that shit became very funny. And they started sounding funny. The more I pushed down this road, the funnier everything became. Everything got funny. People sounding funny. Even smelling funny. And I started moving around in here real quiet like, right? Didn't really tell anybody what I was doing before I did it. I just started doing things. No one was really paying attention to anything I was doing. Don't pay me any, never mind. And now here he sits. And I have built a fucking empire in your face. Think about it. I am one person that has contacts in almost every country in the world. Do you think that happened by accident? No, didn't. It's part of a larger scheme. I tag English speaking people in every part of the world. Watch as all these professional cocksuckers sit silent to a high school dropout with no degrees, no licenses, and no fucking bank account. That shit's goddamn funny. Through their silence, I don't care about the silence. I actually prefer it. I don't care if I gain their approval. They don't get it. Andy, they never get it. I don't care if they approve of anything I say or do. I did these things without their approval. I'm not sitting here seeking Andy's approval. Andy's along for a ride. That's their thing, whether they like it or not. I didn't do this seeking your fucking approval. Parents never approve of the actions of children. So there you go. That's where you got it wrong. See? I don't care if you approve of anything I say or do. Let that compute. That's what makes me interesting. I don't care about how they react. They can't add, subtract, multiply, or divide. They're illiterate fucktards. They have a license to speak because they're dogs. Their silence proves it. It doesn't dispute it. Through their silence, they consent. That's the funny shit. If you're not rooting for me loudly, then in silence you're secretly consenting to me. But I put you on public notice all about it. Told you all about it. See, that's the checker right there. Right? That's the checker, Andy. That's the choker. They're either going to speak or they're not. They can't talk because their throat chakra is in a fucking knot. And a part of that realization also, remember, this is a priceless stream. This truly is priceless knowledge. I wish somebody had told me this shit when I was 15. I'd be a bigger tyrant than I am right now. Can you imagine? Imagine knowing all this as a child. And you didn't have to spend 30 years figuring it out. Wouldn't even be the same professional editing, would it? Children that have been following my feeds for 5 years or longer, I've been doing this for 20 years. And the people that have been following me for any time, 5, 10 years of age, children, they're fucking mind blowing. They got a jump start. They got a head start. Oh, yeah, how did I put that video? Hold on. I'm looking for something I saw the other day, and it's talking all about this circumcision of the tongue. Where the fuck did it go? Yeah, this is really, there it is. Wow, hold on. Wow, right? So I'm hoping you'll hear the volume. I'm hoping there won't be an issue with volume. This is publicly sourced information, another researcher, but he did a fantastic job with this.
Coming to consciousness without pain. This quote reflects Jung's belief that the process of becoming aware of one's own subconscious self often involves facing difficult and painful truths, confronting and integrating these aspects to achieve individuation. But to the ancients, this learning by way of experience was gnosis. There are many variations of the initiation process throughout the world, but each of them has a common theme: darkness, taming the turbulence by mastering the fear-oriented self. Thousands of years ago, a young man was once recommended as an aspirant by a high initiate of the secret school, long before his name became common household lingo. He was soon after put on a strict diet and brought to the court of the pharaoh to be taught an immense course on geometry, architecture, astronomy, and mathematics that would indeed be difficult for anyone with a modern degree. The aspirant had to remain unwavering in his focus, as this class did not pause to let him catch up. He was then offered the crown by the king himself, but immediately rejected this offer, throwing the crown to the ground and exclaiming, "Mithras alone is my crown." The king then struck him in the head, and he was mummified while alive. And why mummified? Well, the young aspirant was about to find out. The initiates brought him to the entrance of a subterranean vault and opened the gates, where he was instructed to drink from a bowl of extremely pungent and bitter liquid, and make no mistake, every drop was consumed by the aspirants. He walked past the entrance labeled Gate of Death and into the underground labyrinth, unknowing of what was to come specifically, but knowing nonetheless that this would be the worst few months of his life. Within the subterranean vault, he began to encounter ghastly creatures and phantoms of the darkness that seemed never-ending. He was left alone and abandoned, with no companion besides his own reflecting thoughts and footsteps, to face and overcome these ghosts of his own soul. But this party just began, because he then spent months surviving within this vast palace of dank, encountering reptiles and scorpions that he couldn't see any better than his papyrus sheets and pen. The venom of the creatures was removed, but certainly not their fangs. So basically fear factor without any chance of leaving to sign a waiver. If he failed at this part, he would die and be forgotten. With only himself to bear, he wrote on his papyrus whatever came to his mind, and this writing might have been the only tool keeping him sharp, because just as his psyche was about to break, he emerged from the labyrinth and into daylight for the first time in what seemed like chasms of time. No later, and just as swiftly, was instructed to take an exam on what he learned in that prior course that he was taught before walking all the way through hell and back. If he was able to maintain his wits over the course of that nightmare, he would pass the exam and move on to the next phase. He was served a feast hosted by beautiful women who made several solid attempts to cast their virginities onto him, but to no avail, as he was not interested in the appetites of the flesh. A test probably more difficult than the scorpion pit fear factor deal, if we're being honest. He was now a master of what would be called the lesser mysteries. He would later be taken to a grand gallery of towering columns chiseled with the wisdom of the initiates before him, and was finally told the deeper meaning of God's name and attributes, as well as the real reason geometry exists as it does in this world. He was also told about the untold history of the many risings and falls of the human race and the golden ages of antiquity. There were, at this point, no secrets kept from him. Ages of collected wisdom were now given freely to the young man, who we will all come to know by first name. If he is able to comprehend the truth bombs dropped on him at this time, he is granted what was called a circumcision of the tongue. A metaphor, of course, being that he was now permitted to speak of this knowledge to the masses however he saw fit. And this freedom of speech came in handy when he went on to write the book of Genesis, because its author, the once aspirant named Moses, was now an initiate of the greater mysteries and cosmic understanding. He was now enabled to shape a great eon of the world to how he saw fit, an eon of time that we live within to this day. Let's look at the word priest kings. We have priest, which is an intermediate between the divine and the people. That's really become derailed in modern times. And we have the word king, which is a ruler that makes laws, a politician, so to speak. So that one was not only derailed, but a complete train wreck, to put it gently. In the days of early dynastic Egypt, of Amun, of Thebes, there was no difference between the two. The natural law of God was also the law on earth. This is a pretty good deal if you can do it right, without using divine word to push your own agenda. The priest kings were not thought to be gods like we were told in school. That was meant to make these extremely advanced people look like savages, and it worked really good for a long time. They were, however, considered to be the embodiment of the natural law of God on earth, as they were found to be qualified for that rep position. Qualified because they themselves followed the law to a T and led by example. Again, we have really come derailed. The pharaohs performed religious rituals to keep the kundalini popping and the veil between heaven and earth thin. And when you see the layout, construction, and purpose in old Egypt, it is harder and harder to claim that these rituals didn't work. Egypt stood tall at least triple the amount of time that our society has been in place. And we now know that slaves were not used and were assumed because their architecture is frankly impossible. Manly P. Hall wrote the words, "Science and theology are two ends of a single truth, but the world will never receive the full benefits of their investigations until they have made peace with each other and labor hand in hand for the accomplishment of the great work, the liberation of spirit and intelligence from the three-dimensional prison, ignorance, superstition, and fear." Every religion has something in common with archaeology. They are seeking what was once lost in ages past. And in this way, they are on a quest for a once real reality that has been buried by the modern times of illusions. This quest is indeed the birthright of man. We are meant to find a balance in a sphere of unbalance. This is the great work that can never be truly finished, because there is no finish line in the game of evolution, that the only constant is change. Just as King David gave his son King Solomon the task of working on his temple that could never be completed, each generation gives the next one the gift of work in building parts upon that very temple, metaphorically speaking, of course. But the building of this parabolic temple is only hard because the reality of the situation is that man is a creature of attitude and desires. He is a servant of impressions and opinions. With this wavering of the unbalanced mind, we cannot attain the qualities necessary to improve upon the great work. This is the reason that a lot of ancient wisdom remains hidden. You know, you wouldn't want a bunch of unlicensed scabs working on a literal temple either. It'll only degrade what is already there to be potentially improved upon. Although a man is born with two eyes, he does not clearly see the harmony of this great plan until suffering long years of sorrow and often solitude. Carl is quoted as saying, "Nothing whatsoever comes to consciousness without pain. Pain is a cornerstone of evolution and improvement. And as grim as it sounds, evolution can be accelerated by way of intensifying the ordeal of suffering, thus shortening the amount of time needed to grow the very eyes that can see clearly." Manly P. Hall wrote, "We have no right to ask for wisdom." And indeed, there was nobody at the starting line saying that we deserve to have insight right out the gate. And frankly, by what authority do we demand happiness as human individuals? Wisdom and happiness is by no means the birthright of any creature. Yet, any creature may have just that if they cultivate those attributes within themselves. In a way, people who demand happiness without doing the work are further feeding that already imbalanced dance by way of lethargy. This is like your teenage daughter who drinks from the Brita filter without refilling it, but way less tragic. And Papa P puts it even more frankly when he writes, "There is no need of asking, nor does any deity bow down to give man these things that he desires. Man is given by nature a gift, and that gift is the privilege of labor. Through labor, he learns all things." But what more can any creature of earth ask than to have the opportunity to prove the existence of what he is internally, to live by the vision that leads him? If you think about it, a lifetime is simply an appointment set up before you were born that is dedicated to this potential accomplishment. But the physical world is often so overwhelming that we tend to forget that it is a thin veil that blocks the much bigger expanse of reality where our true higher selves reside. We come here to experience ignorance and a disconnect from source. And in that very lifetime, we are challenged with choosing wisdom over superstition. Superstition opposes all things and clings to the notion of falling from grace. It is a victim mentality, while wisdom seeks a deeper understanding, thus flows with all things. Wisdom celebrates the beauty of the great mystery that is hidden behind that thin veil of physical reality, experiencing it for everything it is worth until the time is right to leave it behind. Superstition wants to cling to that strand of hair that will take you down into the depths of the ocean with its own sinking ship. With wisdom, a man knows that the great unseen world known as the ether or monad, the Tao, waters of the deep, unified field, or whatever you want to call it, is what gave birth to this physical reality called Maya or illusion. To oversimplify it, the world that Sonic the Hedgehog experiences is real to him, but an illusion nonetheless. The solid ground that he runs his little ass on is birthed from the code stored on that hard drive. Sonic can't see the hard drive any more than we can see the unified field, but he can see you whenever you don't move him for several minutes, and he is very impatient, so you need to get him scooting along again. Shit. That reminds me, I haven't fed my Tamagotchi in 17 years. Spirit creates the trail, and physical matter follows swiftly behind. So in this way, truth leads and ignorance follows, so close behind that it is damn near attached to it. We are all on this trail's path and moving from ignorance to truth. Thus, getting from matter to spirit is simply an act of acceleration. And just like any thorough hike on a literal trail, accelerating to catch up is simply a matter of exertion with a purpose. You can stand there in ignorance and wonder how you're going to catch up, or you can just start walking. There are ditches in the path, tree branches smacking you in the face, and poisonous leaves, all kinds of other obstacles. But through that toil and your acceleration, you will eventually find yourself parallel to that which is actually cutting the trail. And at which point, it certainly does not get any easier, but at least you are now leading the way. Old Fred Nietzsche said that he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. Having a purpose not only makes life worth living, but also makes suffering much easier. Purpose can keep a person from cracking under the pressures of anxiety and heartache. And you don't have to travel very far to find that purpose. This is where people tend to get confused, I think, thinking that they need a big, grandiose end goal for a sense of purpose. This is nonsense, and it'll have you running in tight circles. In the case of anxiety and heartache, for example, the purpose that you now have is simply to feel all that shit for everything that it's teaching you. And that's it. Stop looking further and let that classroom take you into the next one by way of graduation. Just like lifting weights strengthens the arms, anxiety and heartache strengthen the psyche. Simply knowing that gives you a short sense of purpose to keep you from breaking down. We get to know and better acquaint ourselves with the negative to better attract the positive. Like a magnet, those opposites attract when unified. Who's going to carry the boats? What was that supposed to be? That's a David Goggins joke. I know it. I need to make my notes less vague.
Anyone with $10,000 or more in credit card debt or personal loans may qualify for help from National Debt Relief. Minimum payments could literally keep you in debt for
The age of the mystery schools is not something we can quantify in hundreds or even thousands of years. Its origin is not of this world. In esoteric thinking, the mystery schools are brought to this world by groups of celestial intelligences that govern the creative process in all the cosmos. It is here to help mankind reconnect with that cosmic source while we are cast out in this sort of experimental laboratory that is the world. It can be very disheartening to think of our world as a cosmic experiment until you realize that you are the one conducting the experiment, both scientist and lab rat all at once. The initiated understand that, just like symbols, the trials and rituals imposed onto the candidate are only blinds fabricated by the wisest ancient masters to perpetrate ideals that are currently incomprehensible to the masses who are unwilling to bend over backwards for gnosis. And unwilling, if you ask me, is a lot worse than unknowing. The pre-initiate seeks to lift himself up from the lower realms by the very same friction that comes with it. As counterintuitive as it may seem, this is a form of Wu Wei, or effortless living, going downstream with the direction of the water that flows. The spirit is forced to agonize in the concrete world with a mind that is incomprehensible to those dwelling in the same exoteric world. But this is where mankind begins to comprehend the meaning of the allegories and the treacherous path of tribulation that comes with that very concrete. Reaching enlightenment through way of suffering is not a new idea, and it seems that the more ancient the practice, the more brutal. The most extreme cases I have seen are the ways of the Agora tribes. These people endure practices that are incomprehensible to us: self-mutilation, bloodletting, starvation, sleep deprivation, overexertion through dance and chanting, damn near to the point of death, and so on. Extremely difficult practices of which are used as tools to accelerate the spiritual evolution within. However, it should be noted that these people are deep within their culture, super hardcore, and contacting them to learn about these things is extremely dangerous, as many reporters have unfortunately come to find. But they are a real case of a still existing reflection of a time when enlightenment was no light matter. And that makes me wonder what exactly was happening just beneath the ground in the seemingly once treacherous labyrinth that we call Göbekli Tepe. Being that it is decorated with dangerous predators in stone and adorned with phallic symbols, a very masculine theme that seems to hint at a much more extreme form of hazing. Göbekli Tepe is, in fact, even older than the site of Giza. So this could quite possibly be the oldest known site of initiation into the mystery schools through the conquering of fear and danger. The phallic symbols suggest that this was a ritualistic path into manhood, from boy to warrior, or from adept to initiate, a course of gaining immortality by way of firsthand experience with fear and pain. And I wouldn't be surprised if this purposeful run-in with fear was exaggerated by some kind of hallucinogenic brew to amplify the darkness of the experience that much more. And of course, to thin the veil between the potential initiate and the causal realms. Taking acid or something like that under conditions that are less than pleasant, it becomes a complete nightmare. But more on Göbekli Tepe is coming up in next week's video. So mark your calendar, phone deal thingy. Within the Masonic rites, a Mason is not appointed, but instead evolved. The position he holds in the lodge means very little in comparison to his position in the greater spiritual hierarchy that is his character. And surely the Lodge of the Freemason is the very result of this long existing school of initiation. It is a reflection of ancient times where many years of preparation are necessary before entering one foot into the mysteries. This extreme difficulty is a surefire way to make sure that the shallow and faint of heart who give in willingly to temptation would be eliminated from gaining unearned wisdom. Because there's no need for an authority figure to kick somebody out when the process itself is so long and hard, like the pillars of Göbekli Tepe, if you catch my drift. So the neophyte eliminates himself from the game if he is not ready and willing. After all, there is no one as blind as a person who is unwilling to see. To elaborate on what was said a moment ago, unwilling is worse than unable, because unable can be worked on and slowly mastered, whereas unwilling is to wear ignorance proudly as a garment. As the neophyte approaches the position of priest king, he will see things that he has never seen before, not because they weren't there in the first place, but because he was once blind to them. This ain't much different than when you buy a new car and now you see that same car more frequently on the road. You just put that foot in the door and now your attention is better tuned to notice that kind of car. And so the difficult process of initiation is in this way similar to Plato's cave allegory. When they walk out of the cave, they can see for the first time the very things that were casting the shadows on the wall that they thought were reality. But now that their eyes are opened outside of the cave, the sun is now blinding them with light that hurts their fresh eyes. Many people cave in to temptation of going back into the shadows where it is thought to be safe. But the student of the mysteries will endure the pain of the blinding sunlight, knowing that he can adapt and adjust to it. He trusts that process within himself. Freedom cannot be attained by a person who does not know that they're a prisoner. Again, here we are acquainting ourselves with the bad to better attract the good. And the good will frighten us before it pleases us. The axiom, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off, comes to mind. An allegory parallel to the Masons, we are all building something. Enduring the pain that comes with the light gives us the wisdom to build the walls of the temple, walls that expand higher and further outwardly with the consciousness that is growing and building it. However, the profane, living in ignorance, are building the walls of their own prison around themselves, brick by brick, into smaller and smaller cubicles. And yes, a triple pun is intended by using the word cubicle. When building in the dark, we have to keep everything close to be able to see it. And so the world gets smaller and smaller the more you build while in that frame of mind. I think that there is a reason that office cubicles are designed that way. It limits your perception down to what is right in front of you. So what do the people do? They put up pictures of their family and a calendar with a picture of a mountain during sunset to kind of simulate the image of the life that they're missing out on from outside of that box. This is where the necktie comes in handy to be used the moment that you realize this soul trap. Does everybody get it? Who's going to get it? Yeah. Okay, moving on. All human vehicles are born with superpowers by the very hermetic law of cause and effect. We can grab the reins of outcome and control our own destiny by using our emotions as fuel. We learned from Bentov that emotions are unique to this physical realm, a blessing and a curse, indeed, depending on how we aim those emotions. Manly P. Hall sums it up this way: how can emotion manifest save through form? How can mind manifest until the intricately evolved brain cells of matter have raised their organic quality to form the groundwork upon which other things may be based? All students of human nature realize that every expression of man depends upon organic quality, that in every living thing this differs, and the fineness of this matter is the certain indication of growth, mental, physical, or spiritual. True to the doctrines of his craft, the entered apprentice must beautify his temple. He must build within himself by his actions, by the power of his hand, and the tools of his craft, certain qualities which make possible his initiation into the higher degrees of the spiritual lodge. We know that the cube block is symbolic of the tomb. It is also well known that the entered apprentice is incapable of rolling away the stone, of transmuting it into a greater or higher thing. But it is his privilege to purify and glorify that stone and begin the great work of preparing it for the temple of his king. And I love the way that is a metaphor for you can't roll the stone. It's a block, it's a cube, it's a square, but you can decorate it, so to speak, like the dung beetle. You can polish a turd. Few realize that since the universe is made up of individuals in various stages of development, responsibility is consequently individual, and everything which man wishes to gain, he must himself build and maintain. If he is to use his finer bodies for the purpose for which they were intended, he must treat them well, that they may be good and faithful servants in the great work that he is preparing for. And it is no secret that the mind and the body are deeply connected and affect each other constantly. If you want to improve the mind, improve the body, and vice versa. After all, the atomic body is a temporary vehicle for the spirit. And just like any vehicle, like a car, it has to be maintained according to its own specific nature. In the book, Lost Keys of Freemasonry, Papa P breaks down 5 particular steps that he considers to be foundation requirements of anyone who might feel urged to correlate himself with the great work of the mystics. 1. The entered apprentice should have studied sufficiently the subject of anatomy to have at least a general idea of the physical body. The human body is the highest manifestation of form which he is capable of analyzing. 2. The entered apprentice must realize that his body is the living temple of the living God and treat it accordingly. For when he abuses or mistreats it, he breaks the sacred obligations which he must assume before he can ever hope to understand the true mysteries of the craft. The breaking of his pact within the higher life evolving within himself unfailingly invokes the retributive agencies of nature. 3. He must study the problem of maintenance through food, clothing, breathing, and other necessities. Those who eat immoderately, dress improperly, and use only about 1/3 of their lung capacity can never have the physical efficiency necessary for the fullest expression of the higher life. So basically no fun allowed there. 4. Human relationships must be idealized at this time, and he must seek to unfold all unselfish qualities which are necessary for the harmonious working of the Mason and his fellow men on the physical plane of nature. 5. He must seek to round off all inequalities. He can best do this by balancing his mental and physical organisms through the application and study of the 7 liberal arts and sciences. And for those 7 steps, see our last video called Stairway to Certitude. And we can probably shorten that up just by saying to do yoga and don't forget to breathe. Breathing, turns out, you got to do pretty much all of the time. What a pain in the ass. And by utilizing more than 1/3 of your lung capacity, I don't think Manly P. Hall is referring to your bong rips. So put it down, Sean. Hall insists that life manifests through human emotion just as much as through physical action. These emotional powers need to be kept in check, like the horses pulling the chariot mentioned in the allegory of the Bhagavad Gita. In the tangible realm, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The exact notion is true for the emotional state of the psyche. It has a direct and immediate reflection into our outer reality. If you can learn to pick and choose your own emotions, then likewise you get to pick and choose your own fate in this world. This works in reverse, by the way, due to what we are finding out about retrocausality in physics. But that's for another video.
What time is it?
It is 12:58, aka 1 o'clock. What's up?
I've been gaming for like an hour.
I know.
No, like 5 hours actually.
You've been deep into it. Why don't you go outside for a little bit?
No.
No.
I'm just getting up so I can have my bones not hurting as much.
We have like 70,000 subscribers, and your hair looks like this, and you're just gonna pop on the screen and not worry about what this looks like?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right. Do you want to read the next part?
No. But can you guys hear this?
Microphone. Are you cracking and popping? Oh, that's gross. Get no. Get out of here. No.
What?
It's just funny because we just got taught and talking about treating your body like a temple and all this, and you come up and you start breaking your own bones in front of me. How are you doing that? Show me double joints. Look on camera. Yeah.
I'm double jointed in my shoulders a bit too. That's why I make this noise.
Yeah. Get out of here. Get out of here.
I know what that means. Dad.
Go outside. Look at the grass. Go get a friend. Go.
Gaming. I'm just seeing. I'm getting back.
And another axiom comes to mind. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at start to change. This is emotional alchemy cut and drive. This is emotional alchemy cut and dry. And so Mr. Hall drops us 5 more steps that are this time concerned more with the psyche. 1, the mastery of emotional outbreaks of all kinds, poise under trying conditions, and kindness in the face of unkindness, and simplicity with its accompanying power. These points show that the seeker is worthy of being taught. 2, the mastery of the animal energies, the curbing of passion and desire, and the control of the lower nature mark the faithful attempts on the part of the student. 3, the understanding and mastery of the creative forces, the consecration of them to the unfolding of the spiritual nature, and a proper understanding of their physical application. 4, the transmutation of personal affection into impersonal compassion. This shows that the fellow craftsman truly understands his duties and is living in a manner worthy of his order. Personalities cannot bind the true member. For having raised 1 point of the compass, he now realizes that all personal manifestations are governed by impersonal principles. And again, for that compass metaphor, watch the most recent video. 5, the candidate consecrates the 5 senses to the study of human problems with the unfolding of sense centers as the motive. For he realizes that the 5 senses are keys, the proper application of which will give him material for spiritual transmutation, if he will apply them to the common divisor of analogy. So basically, we embody the mind that connects heaven and earth together in this endless chain above and below. The spiritual light is brighter if we evolve higher the personal vehicle of the soul, which is mind and body coherence. The alchemical sun and moon are united in this hermetic degree. The psyche can be lifted and liberated from its symbolic cube.
This is the stuff your insurance company doesn't want you to know about. Have you noticed your auto insurance payments have practically doubled recently?
So What happened when the aspirant was locked away in the darkness to experience fear? Let's take a step back in time and let's once again pay a visit to ancient Egypt. Of all the ancient peoples, the old school Egyptians were the most advanced in the occult sciences. Only the wisest of philosophers would travel across the globe to be initiated into the Great Mystery School. How do you say it? Thales?
Let's say it again to me. I might not have heard you actually.
Thales. Sometimes I'll just pronounce it wrong because it makes people comment.
Do that.
But
I think if I know.
Thales, Solon, Pythagoras, and Plato all traveled to the delta of the Nile seeking this gnosis. What happened within remains up for debate, but we have a solid source of information by the name of the late Manly P. Hall. Through those passageways lies the path that leads to the eye of judgment and the feet of Amun-Ra. Go, and if thy heart be pure as the garment that you wear, and if thy motive be unselfish, thy feet shall not stumble, and thy being shall be filled with light. But remember that Typhon and his host of death lurk in every shadow, and that death is the result of failure. A side note, Typhon is the desire of the few pitted against the good of the many. He is the spirit of dissension and discord that breaks up unity of purpose by setting factions against each other, divide and conquer. The desire for riches, power, and sovereignty by which this evil genius was obsessed reveals the temptation by which humanity is deflected from the ultimate goal and led into the byways of sorrow and despair. As the murderers of the master builder, they are ignorance, superstition, and fear, the destroyer of all good things. So moving on with the story here. The shadows of the great unknown closed over him who had dedicated his life to the search of the eternal. The priest watched him until he was lost to sight among the massive pillars beyond the silent span that divided the living from the dead. Through years of purification, he had prepared himself for the great ordeal. With a purified body and balanced mind, he went his way in and out among the pillars that loomed about him. He seemed a ghostly form amid a grove of ancient trees. He passed steadily on his way with but one thought in mind: let there be light. Ghastly music grew louder and louder, terminating at last in a mighty roar. The very walls shook. The dancing forms swayed like flickering candles. Before him loomed another doorway, flanked on either side by an obelisk of carved marble, one black and the other white. There materialized upon the ground at his feet a swirl of lurid mist. In the faint glow that it cast, it twisted like some oily gas. Then out of this cloud issued a gigantic form, half human, half reptile. In its bloodshot eyes burned ruddy pools of demon fire, while white clawed hands reached out to enfold and crush the slender figure that confronted it. Aradamus wavered for a single instant as the horrible apparition lunged forward, its size doubly magnified in the iridescent fog. Then the white-robed neophyte again slowly advanced. He raised his face and courageously faced the hideous specter. As he confronted the menacing form, for an instant it loomed over him like a towering demon. Aradamus raised the cross he carried and held it up before the monster. The crux anasta gleamed with a wondrous golden light, which, striking the oily, scaly monster, seemed to dissolve its every particle into golden sparks. Bearing his cross, Aradamus entered the room and gazed upward at the lofty dome. There, floating in space far above his head, he saw a great closed eye, surrounded by fleecy clouds and rainbow colors. Long Aradamus gazed upon the wondering sight, for he knew it was the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye of the gods. As he stood, he prayed that the will of the gods might be made known to him, and that in some way he might be found worthy to to open that closed eye in the temple of the living God. The eyelid flickered. As the great orb slowly opened, the chamber was filled with dazzling, blinding light that seemed to consume the very stones with fire. Aradamus staggered. It seemed as if every atom of his being was scorched by the effulgence of that glow. He closed his eyes and now feared to open them, for in that terrific blaze of splendor, it seemed that only blindness would follow. But then a strange feeling of peace and calm descended upon him, and he dared to open his eyes to find that the glare was gone. The entire chamber was bathed in a soft, wondrous glow from the almighty eye in the ceiling. As his eyes became accustomed to the glow, he saw that he was no longer alone. He was surrounded by 12 white-robed figures who, bowing before him, held up strange insignia from living gold. All the figures pointed, and as he followed the direction of their hands, he saw a staircase of living light that led far up into the dome and past the eye in the ceiling. With one voice, the 12 said, "Yonder lies the way of liberation." Yonder. With feet that seemed to barely touch the steps, he climbed upward into the dawn of the great unknown. After climbing many steps, he reached a doorway that opened as he neared it. The breath of morning air fanned his cheek, and a golden ray of sun played among the waves of his dark hair. This turned into a romance novel real quick. Surprised, he then stood at the top of the mighty pyramid. Before him, a blazing altar. In the distance, far over the horizon, the rolling sands of the Egyptian desert reflected the first rays of the morning sun. Like a globe of golden fire, rose again out of the eternal east. As Aradamus stood there, a voice that seemed to issue from the very heavens chanted a strange song, and a hand, reaching out as if it were from the globe of day itself, placed a serpent wrought of gold upon the brow of the new initiate. Behold Khepera, the rising sun, for he brings the mighty globe of day out of darkness of night between his claws. So for thee, the Son of Spirit has risen from the darkness of night, and in the name of the living God, we hail thee, priest of Ra. Okay, I want to know what was in that brew. So, ancient hierophants, who it is said that death had forgotten, royal priests who were born from one age to another age without dying. It was said that Melchizedek was his own father and mother, and that Jesus was of the same order. These immortals were parallel to the symbol of the phoenix of the lesser understood Masonic emblem. The axiom, "He has come forth by day," parallels the life of Enoch, once he was liberated from his darkest portions and left the world without tasting the bitterness of death. The legendary and wise Plato suggested that the body is a sepulchre of the soul, and the soul within awaits liberation one way or another, and well, one of two ways. The ignorant are liberated through necessity, but the wise through choice. When you are faced with two paths, choose the path that is hard. Choose the path that is dark. Choose the path with the brambles in your way. Because if you aren't busy clearing obstacles in your path, then you must be following someone else's.
When people work out, everyone thinks you go to the gym, lift weights for an hour, and you're done. To me, it's not like that.
Giving into it, feeding into it, buried into my own head in here, finding rest in it. It's seeing circles and squares, and looking into it like it is. Walk up to the end. Dive into the abyss. Fly away as if there's no bottom or top. Lean into it and embrace the ladder. Between the pillars that don't stand alone or end. God's in our eyes.
I steal from a few people because they're saying the same things. I'm not doing it to
If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1, we passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice. Under our forfeiture statutes, the government can take everything you own. Everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail.
I got a lot of shit in there now.
Away from my mother, your husband, our families.
Yeah.
So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. They must be taken off the street. They must be taken off the street. They must be taken off the street.
That's the funny shit. Like, you know.
Give me a bug, need the Gucci stuff. Push your limit and you ain't good enough. All your niggas say that you lost without me. All my bitches feel like I died without me. Fucking with you feel like jail, nigga. I can't even exhale, nigga. Pussy in the
See it. You ready? Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know. I'm a cowboy. On a steel side.
I count money, I count money, I count money. I swear in a hurry.
Or I could be yellow, I could be blue, or I could be purple, I could be green or pink or black or white. I could be every color you like. I could be red, or I could be yellow, I could be blue, or I could be purple.
I got my head out the sunroof. I'm blasting our favorite tunes.
Zombies don't believe. So, Call of Duty. How are y'all doing? Young's playing Call of Duty right now. I'm I had one. So I mean, it's more than just doing your thumb. Pretty.
What is this here?
That's the Earth.
That's the Earth. That's the moon?
Yes.
And the eagle?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like to do that?
That's why I said that, yeah. Thank you all very much. The event will take perhaps up to you long time. Okay. That's us. See you. About your meeting with the president.
Usually that is like 7, so I'm at like 5 or 6 or 5. I got 5.
Society, they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. They are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. Ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. Ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. Ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street.
Right? Once upon a time, people had a brain. E-I-E-I-O. No, it's absolutely amazing. I got this letter in the mail the other day, Dave.
Yep.
And notice of substantiation or indication their claims are substantiated.
Oh.
It's tricky language, right?
Yeah.
Apparently,
Well, yeah,
the wording is supposed to cause confusion.
Yeah,
but I'm over here going, how did they substantiate anything without a hearing?
Yeah.
And I keep asking all these people that I asked that question yesterday at the visit, and they canceled the visit.
But you get to go see him today, yeah. You excited? Huh?
Well, you know, I can't even tell you how stressing this is.
I know, but at least you get to see.
For an hour and a half under gunpoint. We got a cop watching me with a gun at his hip. They think I'm some sort of terrorist. How the fuck are they not terrorizing me? Yeah. That's the mind-boggling part, right? How the fuck are they not terrorizing me? It's a good question. And then they all swear to protect the law and the rights of individuals. And I'm looking at the situation. Whose rights are being protected? Draco's, Erica's, or mine? Nobody's. That's the fucking funny part.
Yes.
It's weird, right? Like, I don't know how you're supposed to feel safe.
And then when you tell people about it, well, look where that gets you. They're only worried about themselves. But I'm like, hey, this will happen to you soon. If it's going to happen to me, it'll happen to you. You may as well be in my chair. Because, you know, what's done to one is done to all. Amazing.